Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, payment orchestration continues to be a massive topic in digital payments, and it has also become even more prevalent post-COVID-19, with increased demand for consumers for more digitised payment methods in this age of contactless convenience. And that's also combined with the push for merchants to drive global growth ambitions with efficient cross-border services. So I wanted to learn more about this area, the role of technology, and I must admit, this isn't my area of expertise. So I turned to CellPoint Digital, which is a leader in payment orchestration and has a long-standing history of delivering payment orchestration services for brands in the air travel sector and one of the most complex markets from a cross-border payments perspective. Now, it boasts Virgin Atlantic, Cebu Pacific, and so many other clients that it has helped transform their payment architecture with technology. And it's now replicating all of its successes to date in new verticals, including gaming and e-commerce, to name but a few. So with the scene set, buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Kristian Gjerding in conversation today, where we're going to discuss all things payment orchestration and the tech behind it. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Kristian. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it, Neil. This is very exciting. I am probably slightly a nerd, I would say, a little bit of a nerd. As I grew up in the early 80s, computers were just beginning to emerge as a real thing. And I remember when I got my first computer, which was a PET 2001, and started to sort of getting into to tech and IT, and I was always very fascinated at these things. And believe it or not, at a very early age, with some money I inherited, I bought a mainframe, not a new one, a used one that was outdated, and constructed it back at my house and plugged it in and started to mess around with that. And then later on in life, I came into enterprise IT, and so as a person, I was always very interested in what technology could deliver in that market. Fortunately, I was never good enough technically to program, so I went into the business side of things and worked for a range of the traditional large enterprise IT providers. And then after some years, I got tired of the corporate life and said, hey, why not get a cozy, easy life, 3-4 days of work a week, and started my own business. And obviously, as everybody knows, that never became 3 or 4 days. But it was super excited and super exciting. I went into mobile commerce in the very early days, back in 2001. And what was happening and what really caught my attention was that mobile devices, which, actually the Nordic countries were pretty early with the NMT devices back in again, the late 80s, early 90s. And they were big battery driven machines rather than phones that you could carry around or drag around, really, together with your Osborne computer, which was another thing you dragged around. And, suddenly that's changed over 15 years and became small devices that everybody started to carry. And in the Nordics, where I'm from, I just got back from the States, having lived there for a little while. In late 90s, we just saw an explosion of people using mobile devices. And I thought that's going to become something more than just a device for texting and calling. And so I went back to the States in 2001, having started my first company ever, and started working with the telcos in the US. So back then, when AT&T, Singular, Verizon, Sprint, and others, and the ability to deliver content to enterprise clients, consumers. And then we constructed a billing engine on top of that enabled us to sort of manage the whole flow of funds across pieces of content owned by many stakeholders. And it was really interesting. And so we're really using mobile devices as a delivery method, but also as a billing channel. And sold the business and walked around for a year thinking about what to do. And I thought, hey, there's no doubt about the fact that digital and specifically mobile devices will become a sales channel at some point in time. And on the other side, it also became clear to me that the traditional payments ecosystem would begin to fragment. Things will change. And digital currencies or similar things would be needed in order to accommodate what would be, at what I thought at that point in time, a very soon wave of utilization of mobile devices in all kinds of commerce. And then lastly, my enterprise experience told me that enterprise merchants would have a lot of problems trying to adopt these new technologies and tying it into their legacy infrastructure. And that was the birth of CellPoint. And so as a person, I'm most certainly a tech nerd, coupled with a business person who has a strong curiosity for the use of technology in many different ways.
What a great story. And you made me laugh there when you was talking about when you were sat in the corporate life dreaming of getting out and then thinking, I want to get out of this rat race and have a 3-4 day week or whatever. I was exactly the same. I left the corporate life 5 years ago, and I still remember thinking, you know what I'm going to do? On a Wednesday afternoon or a Wednesday lunchtime, I'm going to go to the cinema because I can and have the place to myself. I've still not been to the cinema on a Wednesday afternoon 5 years later. It's...
Yeah, and the funny thing was, and that's exactly the point, right? You get out with these ideas, and you just get consumed by what you do because it's so exciting, and at the same time, also, of course, very tough. There's a lot of stuff to do, and not everything goes exactly to plan, or rather, pretty much nothing goes to plan. Yeah. And so, you just get caught up in this reality. But I think it is different than the rat race. I also think the rat race changed. That's a whole different conversation post-pandemic. I think that gave the rat race a good behavioral kick, so to speak, and not changing things around for the better. But that's a different conversation. I think that another thing was I wanted to get away from traveling. I was traveling pretty much every day. And now I travel probably a little less in terms of number of trips, but much longer, right? I travel globally, and there you go. And I also have a love for travel. I will be honest with you. I actually do enjoy once I'm on the plane. I don't enjoy that much getting onto the plane. That's becoming really disastrous. But once you're on the plane, it's a great thing, and always love going places. So that's not so bad.
I mean, I go to a lot of tech conferences around the world, and I've always loved, more than anything about travel, is it's the one place that I can go and there is no internet, So I'm 35,000 feet in the air, no notifications, no nothing. I'm kind of locked in a bubble. But of course, there's Wi-Fi on planes now, so there's no escape on there, right?
No, I know. I mean, the good news is it's still pretty spotty, particularly when you go transatlantic. It's not that good. Yeah. And it's still socially accepted, if you can put it that way, to go to sleep. So work some hours and then get some sleep if you do a long haul, which I do mostly. But I agree with you. It would be great. So I think the next thing we're going to do is go to space, right?
Yes. Oh, well, you and me both. Yeah, definitely. But one of the reasons I invited you on the podcast today was to talk about payment orchestration, because it continues to be a hot topic, especially in digital payments, and it has become more prevalent post-COVID-19 with the increased demand from consumers for more digitized payment methods, combined with this push for merchants to drive global growth with efficient cross-border services. So can you set the scene and just share any insights that you've picked up around what payment orchestration is and the kind of trends that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, absolutely. As I started by saying, CellPoint was constructed to do, we called it commercial orchestration at the beginning. Yeah. But that was the fundamental design that we put into play with our Velocity platform. And we started constructing it in 2007, and figuring out the details. And what payment orchestration for us is really managing everything end to end in the flow of money on the behalf of a merchant. And that relates both to interacting with consumers, but also interacting with back office and B2B environments. And so for me, payment orchestration was really that centralized piece that would manage that entire environment. So not just a matter of taking payments on the front end from consumers, but also managing reconciliations, settlement, the whole management of B2B payments, reporting, taking the pressure of the back office function, which is really a big piece of what happens in an emergent environment when it comes to payments. And if you want an analogy, I remember clearly back in the 80s when I started enterprise, you would see massive projects, trying to manage supply chains or whatever it was. And many of these projects would tank. They would never come to fruition or would not be what they started out designing and whatnot. And then a little known company created something called SAP. And I think the most successful version was probably SAP R3, which revolutionized how a software platform would help merchants or companies manage a particular part of their business. Payment orchestration is that for payments. We had all the pieces before in service providers and whatnot, but the need now is really for these clients to manage that in an easier way, to provide a better user experience, and to drive down costs and increase efficiency in the back office. And that is really what payment orchestration does. It is one centralized environment that gives you a complete overview of your flow of funds and managing all the parts in between, including deploying payment methods to particular markets, even to particular consumers on the fly, enabling a much higher conversion rate in your digital channels.
And where does Sellpoint Digital fit in this space? And how are you helping transform that payment architecture with your technology?
Yeah, so we are a payment orchestrator, and we I know this is a tech podcast, so I hope it's okay if we go a little bit below. But what we did from the get-go was we realized mobile was important. So we were actually called Sellpoint Mobile in the beginning. And the reason for that was we wanted to be a mobile-first company. A little bit early, but that was the intent. And so we constructed a complete enterprise bus. We call it the mobile enterprise bus that was optimized for delivering interaction on the mobile device from a commercial perspective. Our first client was a rail company out in the Nordics, a big one, about 190 odd, 200 and whatever million passengers, or trips, not passengers, but trips per year. So it's pretty big with a combination of cosmopolitan and national rail travel. And we literally transformed them from a non-digital to a pure digital business in the course of a few years with the platform. So that was sort of the first client engagement we did. And the whole point with what we were trying to do is to say, hey, look, you got these new channels coming in, they're going to fragment. And there's no way your infrastructure can manage that. If you're going to try and do it the traditional way, you're going to be growing your software team by several 100%, right? It's never going to be financially viable. On the other hand, you got a legacy ticketing platform that needs to be leveraged. You can't just scrap it and start over. It's going to be very expensive, which you build over many years, and it contains a lot of IP. And then on the other side of this, digital payment methods needs to come in. And so we really created bottom up an orchestration platform, a commercial orchestration platform that was able to integrate deep into the merchant environment, translate data and capture information, and then manage the deployment of payment methods into initially mobile devices. So what we really did was to create this commercial orchestration platform that could support this rail company in taking initially card payments and also B2B payments from consumers and business travelers alike, and then deliver that experience to the mobile device. And we did that quite successfully. They transformed, I think, in the first 4 years, somewhat up 95% to pure mobile transactions. So creating that orchestration platform from the get-go was really our intent. It was to be sitting in the middle between the digital sales channels of the merchant and the back office and their legacy infrastructure, whatever that may be. So both the back office from a financial management perspective and the legacy infrastructure for processing whatever product that the merchant had. And so we were very early out. Obviously, we had an anticipation that by 2012, but commercial orchestration would be the hot topic. Here we are, 2022, and it's finally kicking off. So talk about timing. But there you go, right? So fortunately, we became successful with this technology into airlines. It became clear to us quite quickly that we were way early, and that the most fragmented and complex ecosystems from a merchant perspective was actually airlines. And so we went after airlines and won our first airline in early 2013, which was Emirates, and deployed part of the platform with them. And so we sit in the middle, just like SAP sits in the middle for ERP, we sit in the middle for commercial orchestration. And the intent here is to empower our merchants to use one console, and with that console across different roles within the organization to really manage the entire flow of funds from a payments perspective.
Now, you did introduce yourself as a tech nerd, and this is a tech podcast, so I'm going to allow you to geek out for a few moments here. Can you tell me more about how you navigate complex payment data with your payment orchestration's proprietary rules engine, and how this tech helps customers to optimize their existing payment relationships? So I'm going to allow you to let everyone have a look under the hood here and how that works, but can you expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So from the get-go, we wanted to create microservices. So we started by creating our MISP, we called it back then, Mobile Enterprise Service Bus, which was really the translating and orchestrating layer between external systems, back office systems, legacy systems, and the front end, right? So we had a layer that would normalize data flows from different sources. And the intent was to simplify integrating into our environment, and also to ensure that we would have normalized data to process between these different systems. So there was a translation component involved here as well. On top of that, we built business modules, so business functionality like our Velocity Payment Engine, our Vision Management Engine, and other similar systems. And so the intent was to say, hey, look, we know for a fact that, and that was just from a very rudimentary understanding of how complex it really was. We understood that the payment systems did not all speak the same language. There were a lot of different ways things could be done, and pretty much every provider had their proprietary data set that we need to normalize between. And then every merchant had their proprietary data set. And so there was a lot of challenges here. And that was really, from the get-go, what we wanted to do was to build that ability to easily integrate, grab the data, transform them so they would fit into the merchant environment, process the data, and then transform backwards into whatever provider they were connected to. So it was a acquirer on one side, or a gateway, or a CM system, or whatever it may be, we would take care of that translation from a payments perspective. And so that later became microservices, or known as microservices. And obviously, building your own enterprise bus was a big deal. We have made that cloud native today, and so obviously a lot of evolution has happened on our platform from the early days of 12 years ago. But the concept is the same. We want to take data from a whole range of different sources. We want to enable very, very fast integration into our environments. We have something we call our integration factory, which is really dedicated stack teams across our various business units or technology units that helps complete integrations very, very rapidly. So it's easy for both a partner in the ecosystem, but also for a merchant to get access to our environment. And that gives them one single view in our Vision control platform to look at data from a perspective of, whether it's the e-commerce department or sales department looking at transaction data, if it's the treasury function looking at reconciliation data, It can even be IT who wants to look at ecosystem uptime. It can be fraud people wanting to look at fraud data. So we wanted to create that unified environment. That was always the vision behind CellPoint.
And you mentioned your multi-acquirer strategy there. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that also helps with cross-border transactions too?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, this came from the same sort of enterprise mindset of redundancy and the ability to give control to the merchant, which was always our intent. So in cross-border payments, obviously, if you have a lot of global business or large regional business, you're going to get lower rates if you acquire locally. So wherever the card is originating from, it's going to be cheaper for you to transact with a local acquirer. And that's the whole point between cross-border commerce and a multi-acquire strategy. But there's a few other things that actually also matters when you look at this particular area. You're going to be able to get increased conversion rates. I mean, there's just a lot of complexity in payments, and sometimes you can have somebody traveling who is unable to complete a payment in wherever that person is, just because that person's card is getting rejected by a local acquirer, or your own acquirer may reject it because they think you're traveling. And so there are a lot of different things you can do, from failover, retry logic. You're going to be able to shift your traffic based on various rate agreements you create with your acquirers. And so ultimately, it's a matter of increasing conversion, improving your margin, and reducing costs and increasing availability.
And just to bring to life everything that we're talking about here, you don't have to mention any names, but do you have any client stories or use cases that you could share?
Yeah, absolutely. We got several. I mean, we work with a number of large brands. We recently launched Virgin Holidays as part of the Virgin Atlantic Group. Again, exactly the same thing. They have a multi-acquire reality that they're doing cross-border payments and wanted to be able to manage that from a centralized environment, giving them the flexibility of deploying payment methods pretty much on the fly and connecting a whole range of service providers into their ecosystem without having to manage that slew of integrations. Another one is Cebu Pacific, which is one of the most successful low-cost carriers in APAC, out of the Philippines. Actually, probably our first orchestration customer in that region, which was a carrier that, again, the same thing. They wanted to get control of the payment ecosystem. They were spending way too much time. They were seeing a lot of pressure on the back office from the increase of different payment methods and reconciling those, managing those, both in the digital sales channel, but also from a perspective of back office functions. And here again, we came in and we helped them manage that entire ecosystem. We deployed a whole range of payment methods localized in various areas of APAC where they fly, and a whole slew of acquirers. So that was another one. Obviously, Avianca, which is a very large carrier out of Latam, Colombia, which is same thing. They were seeing an increase in digital transactions. They wanted to be able to service their travelers better in different countries, and we're looking for that increased conversion that we could supply, and we were seeing fantastic ROI on our platform across all these clients.
And on the flip side of that, what about organizations who take payments? How's the tech making their life easier?
Yeah, I mean, I assume you mean service providers like acquirers? Yeah. So, I mean, from an acquirer's perspective, the value here is that the payment orchestrators will help them actually get more business. In reality, it will. We're going to make it easier for merchants to connect in and to have access to a wide variety of services from different providers. We recently announced a partnership with Chargeback 911, which will be implemented in our platform, and now 911 will have access to our client base instantaneously. Same thing for an acquirer, same thing for a processor. We are announcing a partnership with another large provider shortly. And for them, they're going to get access to our entire environment, and they don't have to do a whole range of work whenever these merchants come onto their platform. So for them, it's going to be a lot easier to get access. So it's really taking the integration part and the management part out of the equation.
And what excites you about the future? Because this space seems to be just thriving at the moment and evolving continuously. But what is it that excites you about it?
Well, so what really excites me about the future is if we take the terrible war in the Ukraine and obviously the post-pandemic reality where a lot of people got hurt financially and also obviously very sadly lost their lives. If we take those things apart, I do think that there is a tremendous opportunity for digital growth. And I think consumers are becoming smarter and smarter about what that means. And it's not that they haven't always been smart, but they're beginning to understand the value of using particular payment methods to give them additional benefits in their payment journey. So I think the opportunity is immense. I think we're going to see a lot of businesses that through the pandemic became either regional or global, and so it's just so much going to happen. The actual digital conversion or transformation is only just beginning. And we've been saying that for the last, I remember I went to a conference in 2008 and everybody said, hey, yeah, digital transformation, we're all on the bandwagon by 2012. I can't remember what they said, 20% of all Europeans going to be, doing mobile payments. And it was not even 0.2% in 2012. But now it's really happening. You can see that businesses are really transforming the way they interact with their consumers and with their partners, with their vendors. So it's really across the board we're seeing a tremendous amount of change happening, and I think that really excites me because that's just going to bring a lot of interesting solution opportunities to market.
And I appreciate you probably can't share too much about what you're working on, but is there anything you can share about what your big focus is and what we can expect next for CellPoint?
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that the whole point about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology is really going to make additional transformations in the coming years. And you will see CellPoint show up in that arena for sure.
And what about, sorry, I was going to ask you something completely different now, but I'll stick to my my thing. Now, we started the podcast talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. And as we come full circle, I'm going to ask you to leave us with something, a personal note of inspiration. I know you do a lot of traveling, so that's going to involve either reading or listening to music on some big noise-cancelling earphones. So is that a song that helps you get your head in the zone that we can add to our Spotify playlist, or a book that we can add to our Amazon wish list? What are you going to leave us with today?
Yeah, I mean, I got both, and we can start with the book. I mean, Design to Scale by Lex Sisney. Yeah, is really my Bible, if you want to put it that way. I was fortunate enough to being exposed to Lex Sisney in 2014, and has really transformed the way that I build and run teams. So leadership has always excited me, and I find it really inspiring to use learnings from other people who has been through that journey several times. So that's a book that I really feel is incredibly interesting and very very useful for entrepreneurs. Actually, it's really helped us at CellPoint to scale our business and to create, I think, a better management style or leadership style, if you want. So that was the book, and you also want a song.
Yeah, a song that means something to you, and maybe a story behind that song, and we'll add that to our Amazon, to our Spotify playlist.
Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd.
Yes. Yeah, that is a great tune.
That's a song that really got me off my backside when I was very young, and put me onto a life of adventure, I would say.
Awesome. Well, I'll get that added to our Spotify playlist. I absolutely love that song myself. There's also a great cover, I think, with I think it was Roger Waters and Van Morrison doing it as well. That was a great cover too. But before I let you go, for anyone listening just wanting to find out more information about CellPoint, what's the best starting point for everything, especially if they want to contact your team too?
Yeah, I mean, CellpointDigital.com, either on your mobile or on your laptop is a great way. We have a good story there. I think there's a lot of information about our company, who we are, what we stand for, and how to reach us. I'm also obviously available on various social media platforms. So me personally, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. The company is on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So these are good ways to get to know us from an easy position of your home desk, so to speak.
Well, as I said at the very beginning of the podcast, I think payment orchestration continues to be a hot topic in digital payments, and it's also an extremely complex one. And I think you did a fantastic job today of simplifying that, talking about it in a language that everyone can understand, but also lifting the hood and letting us geek out for a few minutes too. So a big thank you for taking the time to come on and join me today.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you so much for having me, and I wish you a great weekend.
What a great guy. I just love geeking out with Kristian there for a few moments and discussing the main benefits of payment orchestration technology, from accessing hundreds of alternative payment methods, helping merchants to take the right payment at the right time in the right channel for their customers, and also, of course, how it's simplifying the enabling of cross-border transactions via that multi-acquire strategy. And of course, making life easier for organisations who take payments, as they don't have to renegotiate with payment providers and make system changes. But as I said at the very beginning of the podcast, this is not my area of expertise. That's why I get guests on here. That's why I ask you to share your insights, your experiences. And together, I think we can all learn a thing or two. So email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, just at Neil C. Hughes. I'm the easiest guy in the world to find, and my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. But I've given you a lot to think about today, so hopefully you'll email me any suggestions or any experiences you've had, and hopefully you'll join me again tomorrow. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.